Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borgononi and Matthew Betts.
Week 5, we are back, Footballers DFS Podcast with Borg and Betts, and I have to say, we took a bath this past week, and it wasn't a good one. We turned out pretty dirty.
It was a down week, man. You know what? But hey, listen, it happens, right? And we said what we need to have our listeners understand when playing DFS is that you do not win every single week. Otherwise, this would be way too easy and everyone would do it and everyone would just be filthy rich. So it doesn't work that way. Yeah, it was a down week for us. Had a couple injuries again that really hurt. But yes, it was a learning experience for sure. And I'm ready to come back and crush here in week 5. And I hope all of our listeners are as well.
Yeah, I'm actually at the beach this week. I'm recording at the beach. And so right now I'm trying to clear my mind. I'm trying to refresh my focus with DFS. So hopefully that's going to help me.
It has to.
I feel like, I need some renewed perspective. So I'm with my family. We're at the beach here in Florida, and I'm excited because there's a couple of things I did learn from week 4. And that's going to be our quick question. What is one lesson that you learned that you can take into this next week, Betts?
Yeah, I think for me, one lesson I learned is just, and this goes against everything I've ever done in cash games. I don't know why I did it this week, to be honest with you. So I'm learning along the way, like all of our listeners, but I need to stop playing more volatile wide receivers in cash formats. It's a very high variance type of position as it is, and playing guys like Brandon Cooks, who, yes, the matchup was perfect on paper. He was running a ton of routes. He was involved in the game, but I mean, last week, 3 targets, 0 catches, literally put up a goose egg. And that's not a cash game receiver. I mean, everything we know about Brandon Cooks is boom bust. So for me, that was a little short-sighted to play him. And certainly I want to build around more reliable PPR type of wide receivers if I build my cash lineups with the stud running backs as we usually do. So for me, that was learning experience. I intend to not make that mistake twice here again in week 5.
Yeah, for me, it was tough. My cash lineups, weeks 1 through 3, have all cashed out 100%. I mean, I was on a roll. And then in week 4, I ran into Kenyon Drake, which I think a lot of people did roster Kenyon Drake because the price was good on DK, who was still only 6K. And man, it just sunk my teams, if I was honest. Between Kenyon Drake and DJ Moore, the opportunity was there. But really, there were other players that stepped up. Chase Edmonds, had 6 targets. I mean, he's getting way more passing down work than Kenyon Drake, and I probably should have seen that. And then with the Panthers, Robbie Anderson looks like he's the guy that we want to think about rostering. Although DJ Moore, 2 weeks ago, had 13 targets in a game. But it's just when we're building out cash lineups, we need to be able to look and see what could go wrong. It's not just we're piecing together a roster that has a high floor. What we're saying, where could this go wrong? And with Kenyon Drake, even though the matchup was awesome, I mean, those two guys were playing each other, Cardinals and Panthers. It turned out bad. So yeah, Drake is almost a curse word to me these days. I know a lot of people are really mad at just how things turned out in that regard. Did you play Kenyon Drake?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the process about it was correct, right? Like, great matchup. He's still seeing a ton of opportunities. I think 18 per game is the average that he's seeing when you combine his targets, which isn't much, and his carries. But yeah, he just hasn't looked great. And the offense looks different with DeAndre Hopkins than it did last year, and that's an obvious oh yeah, duh, he's the best wide receiver in the game, so that will happen. But he just hasn't looked like the same type of player in the past month or so. And he was a guy that people took in the first round of redraft leagues for a reason, because they thought he would have the volume. He's just not producing. However, I will say these types of situations scream GPP type of play moving forward. So I'm a sicko. I'm going to play a couple Kenyon Drake shares in my GPP lineups against the Jets this week, but we are not talking about them on today's slate. So just wanted to put that out there. It's a great, quote unquote, buy low opportunity for Kenyon Drake in DFS. I don't think anyone's going to play him this week.
No, I think that's a great point. And at the end of the day with cash, you're asking yourself who are 2 to 3 running backs that are going to get volume. And so, like you said, 18 opportunities for that price is something that you're just going to keep chasing, and especially in tournaments. If you haven't had a chance to go online, you can look at all of the articles that are found in the DFS Pass. You can go to ultimatedfspass.com. Bet's got to put out a Thursday night preview article in the Vegas Report. Every week I do a pace of play and an article highlighting wide receiver and cornerback matchups. We would say that our DFS Pass has lots of good content, but it also, you get a return on your money because what you actually get is picks for DraftKings and FanDuel from Ben Cummins and Rob Wozniak as well. So we have a lot of tools in our DFS Pass, and we really encourage people to check it out, see if it's worth your time. And you can also, if you bought the Ultimate Draft Kit, you can actually get the DFS Pass for a major discount for half off. So go online, ultimatedfspass.com. And then also, if you want to, go on iTunes, subscribe and review. We've got some awesome new 5-star reviews recently that really help us out a lot. We've been climbing the charts, Bets. Anything you want to tell the people just about the momentum of our podcast?
It's been fun, man. I've had this is the highlight of my week. I don't know if that's lame or not, but I just love sitting down and talking DFS. I mean, hey, with COVID and there's nothing to do. I love it. I love the process, and it's been so fun to talk football with you every week. And I think our listeners have had success, and it's just a good way for us to keep the momentum going here. So yes, I really do appreciate everyone subscribing, rating and reviewing, checking out the DFS Pass, all those things. We really do appreciate it. And I also want to thank the listeners too for playing with us in our weekly contest that we've had going. Unfortunately, you and I have not taken down the winning prize yet. This is the week I am coming for the top spot.
Yes, each week we have a 75-man contest on DraftKings. It's only a $5 entry, and the top 5 positions pay out. But yeah, I think the highest, you got, 12th place. You were maybe 10th or 12th that first
12th.
Week. I've been in the top 25, so I was close. But yeah, it would be fun to take it down. But without further ado, let's get into the main slate.
State of the main slate.
So I mentioned these games, these 5 games we're going to talk about this week with a little bit of trepidation. You guys know that where we're at in 2020 and just the world and NFL football, things do change. And so if we do mention a game, we're recording this on Wednesday evening. So by Friday, if something does change and related to COVID, you need to adjust. And that's part of DFS is as we get news and as we get information, we do want to change. We want to be able to not just, put our flag in the sand on Wednesday and say that, hey, this is what I'm going to do, especially for cash. For cash, you're going to get information that says, I feel more comfortable about these players. But so give us a little bit of room as we're talking about this. But these are 5 games that we would say you need to attack this week. You need to learn how to stack. You need to learn how to fade. Looking at these games because these are going to be the ones that people are talking about. So for the first game, we're going to be talking about those Kansas City Chiefs and those Las Vegas Raiders. This game has a 56.5 total, and the Chiefs are 12-point home favorites, which is just nuts. A 34-point team implied total. So, the Chiefs are 4-0. They're rolling, and they're facing their division foes who, started off 2-0, but it's been kind of a rough go of it the last couple of weeks. Bets, in terms of this game, are the Chiefs just going to run away with it?
I think they are, to be honest with you, man. I mean, what's so scary about this Chiefs team is we really haven't even seen them have a ceiling game yet, right? They were held in check against the Patriots, and of course they didn't have to do a ton in their first couple matchups. They had a great game against the Ravens, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes still hasn't had his 4 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, runs for 50 yards, and just racks up, points left and right. So this is a spot that I think he can do that, and I think he can win. I certainly, if I'm looking at this game, am attacking it as if that is going to be the case. So on the Chiefs side of the ball, I want to build stacks with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and potentially Kelsey, and then throw in CEH as well into a few lineups. I want to have a lot of different exposure to this game on the Chiefs side of the ball because I agree, man. I think they're going to come out and absolutely just smash the Raiders here. And because of that, I don't really want to be heavily invested in the Raiders side of the ball. Of course, if we're stacking, we want to bring it back with someone on that side. But I mean, I can't see a situation where I'm going to play any Derek Carr stacks against this Kansas City team.
Yeah, Carr has a couple of games per year where he just goes off. But this is a different Chiefs defense, if we're honest. The Chiefs defense really should be in play. They're second in turnover differential. It really feels like a game that Vegas puts up 56.5 points, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be mostly Chiefs. Josh Jacobs is interesting. He's yet to score a touchdown. We've brought this up before, but he's never scored a touchdown in a Raiders loss. So either that is saying, wow, like I shouldn't play him at all because they're going to lose, or you know what, maybe it's time for him to buck that trend. But on FanDuel, he's 8,200. He's priced up a ton. And on DraftKings, he's so much lower that he's actually somewhat tempting. Josh Jacobs is all the way down at 6,300 on DraftKings because he isn't getting quite the passing down work. So if you really wanted to go contrarian, I would say, get Patrick Mahomes, get a pass catcher, maybe CEH, and run it back with Josh Jacobs. But at the end of the day, I just want to focus in on the Chiefs side and specifically CEH. Is he a cash game play this week? Because we haven't really seen those ceiling games yet.
Yeah, I think he is. I think for me, I'm going to build around CEH in my cash lineups. He might be the first player I put in and say, okay, what's next? Because he's getting a ton of usage, and we saw in week 1 he can be really effective on the ground, but we're also seeing a huge uptick in his passing game usage. And Las Vegas, man, they are giving up the most receiving yards, 69 receiving yards per game to opposing backs. So we're looking at a situation where CEH should have a positive game script. They're almost 2 touchdown favorites, so certainly he's going to be running the ball in the second half a ton, getting a ton of touches, but then also he can win through the air against this team. They're giving up 5.3 yards per carry. They've given up 7 rushing touchdowns to opposing runners this season. That's the Raiders, and obviously, we're in week 5 now, so 4 games, 7 rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs. I think CEH is in a fantastic spot to come out and smash this week.
Yeah, and I love Travis Kelce this week. He's the tight end 2 on DraftKings. And I'm just going to say this, we'll probably mention it a couple of times this podcast. You have to almost pay up for tight end this week. Because on this slate, we really do get Kittle, Kelce, and Mark Andrews. They're all there. And they're all priced up. So you really need to ask yourself, am I thinking about paying for this guy who is essentially a wide receiver at the tight end position and stacking him with, Mahomes, or stacking Mark Andrews with Lamar Jackson? You have to think that way this week because there's not as many good punt plays that I like. And so for me, Kelsey's in consideration on cash. I usually don't care about my tight ends at all, but he's destroyed the Raiders in the past. And, a couple years ago, he put up a game where it was 160 and 2 touchdowns. He can do that this week, but I think he just has such a safe floor. So yeah, for me, it's stacking the Chiefs side and knowing you're going to have to pay up, or if I just want CEH in cash game, that's what I'm going to go with. Anybody on the Raiders side you want to talk about before we move on?
I think if you're looking for a cheap potential cash game wide receiver, you can look at Hunter Renfrow. Of course, he's always underpriced for what he can do in a PPR format on DraftKings. I mean, he's seen 17 targets over the past 2 weeks, so he's a guy that I would maybe look at in cash. But then if we're talking about a GPP where you're just going full Chiefs onslaught, maybe you're going Pat Mahomes, CEH, and Kelce in one lineup and then bringing it back with someone else. You could get contrarian and play 2 tight ends with one in the flex. With Darren Waller, I think he's really intriguing. I mean, last season against Kansas City, his 2 stat lines were 6 for 63 and 7 for 100. He's leading all tight ends in targets and receptions, so he essentially is the wide receiver 1 right now without Bryan Edwards, without Henry Ruggs, who are dealing with injury. So I'm looking at those 2 guys, but I'm definitely not going to be all in on them, so to speak. If we're talking about this game, I'm with you. You got to go with the Chiefs stack in this matchup.
Yeah, it would be much more interesting if we had Ruggs in this game. So at least you could have someone who's a cheap player that could just take one to the house. But yeah, I like that call about playing both tight ends. It is something in tournaments that you can think about. I actually wouldn't hate it either in cash. But at the end of the day, it's mostly Chiefs here. So what do you think? Chiefs 12.5. What's your thoughts?
It's a huge line to lay, but I'm going to do it with the Chiefs. There's certain teams that you're worried about potentially being a backdoor cover where it makes you look silly and you're like, oh, they only won by 7. Why would they ever bet -12 or -13? But I don't think the Raiders are that team. They're the worst 2-2 team, I think, in the league right now. I'm going to go with the Chiefs laying the 12.
Yep, I'll do the same thing. All right, this next one is an AFC South battle. Team 1-3, one of them's 0-4. Why are we talking about these such bad teams, Bets?
Because we want to attack bad defenses with offenses who can move the ball and put up points in bunches, and that's what we can do here with Gardner Minshew and Deshaun Watson, who now, without Bill O'Brien bringing him down, maybe he can come out and have a smash week. We'll see.
This game is a 54-point total. Jaguars playing at the Texans. The Texans have a 30-point team implied total, which just jumps out to me when I looked at the slate. They're 6-point home favorites. And yeah, Bill O'Brien being fired really does change things just in terms of when we look at this team, their makeup, and what are they playing for. Jacksonville, one of the things that I love, and you pointed this out in the doc, is they just don't get after the quarterback. This isn't a Jacksonville defense that we're scared of like we were maybe in the past. And Watson gets sacked at one of the highest rates of anybody through the first 4 years of a career. Like the dude just bleeds sacks every single time. And so last week I played Deshaun Watson and he didn't quite get there. There's a Will Fuller touchdown at the very end that was just so close. But this week, Deshaun Watson's one of my favorite quarterbacks to stack this week. And I think it's just really clear that he can get to 300 on DK, give you that extra 3-point bonus. And the Jags defense is not something you should be scared of. So how do you want to attack this with Watson?
Yeah, I think Watson's in a great spot here. I just want to put out one quote. This came from Deshaun Watson. This is on Aaron Wilson's Twitter account. He follows the team. I believe it's for the Houston Chronicle. And they asked him about if Bill O'Brien leaving is going to change things with the play calling with Tim Kelly, the OC, at the helm as the offense. And Sean Watson said, yeah, he said, Tim Kelly has to open the book to do what he wants and he can control this offense with me. We're going to do it together. And quote, take that for what you want, but I want to build around Deshaun Watson in a couple of game stacks here with the Jaguars. And as always, I want to build with Will Fuller. When Will Fuller's on the field, you play him because he's productive. And the hamstring injury has kind of been off and on this past 2 or 3 weeks, but when he's on the field, he's been productive. And Brandon Cooks, maybe it's me from last week. I'm just burnt by him because he went goose egg on us. But if I'm building stacks with the Texans, I mean, it's hard to look at anyone else besides Will Fuller.
Yeah, no, this game is going to be super fun, especially to me. The easiest way for me to look at it is to go Watson and Fuller. And then if you in a GPP, I really like Cobb. He's got a great matchup. He's been super productive, which I've written him off at the beginning of the year. Just thought this guy was old and done. But he's been productive, and he's actually affordable, especially on DraftKings. And then on the other side, if you want to do James Robinson, he's priced up. I was looking this week. He's up to running back 5, which is crazy to think that an undrafted free agent rookie is now the RB5 on the slate. But the dude is getting the touches. He's been impressive. I have him in Dynasty, so I feel like a very smart man.
The scouting eye of Kyle. I mean, he saw this guy coming from a mile away.
Guys, let me toot a horn for a second. So I write an undrafted free agent articles. I know you guys are really pumped about that. That's an article you guys look for.
Yes.
nobody.
Yes. I mark the calendar every year waiting for it to come out.
It's literally right after the NFL draft happens. I look at a list and I write down about 10 undrafted free agents that I think could be something. And James Robinson was one of those 10 that I pointed out this year. So I should just retire once again. I think I've done that a couple times on the podcast, that I should just log off. And I should have been done in May after that. But yeah, James Robinson, great choice. What do you think about DJ Chark?
It's Chark week, man. I think DJ Chark finally got off. He got off to a tough start. He got back into rhythm with Gardner Minshew, and this Houston secondary. Let's not joke, right? They are a horrible secondary. He can come out and he can win. He saw 9 targets last week, found the end zone twice. Now, are we going to project 2 touchdowns every week? Probably not. But DJ Chark is a guy who we've seen have these spike weeks in the past, and we can't forget what just happened last week with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Both guys go over 100 yards. Adam Thielen finds the end zone. So this secondary can't hang with DJ Chark. I certainly want to play a couple of Gardner Minshew, DJ Chark stacks. And then on the other side of the ball, if you want to go against Deshaun Watson, or maybe you want to get contrarian, you could look at David Johnson. But I think, a Minshew Chark stack, bringing it back with Will Fuller or Randall Cobb, to me, sounds really, really intriguing, especially in GPPs.
Yeah, Chark is priced up on FanDuel after a 2 TD week last week, but 6,500 on DraftKings, I think he's great. I don't mind Gardner as kind of like a middle of the road option. Much rather go with Watson, but I think he's in play. And then I'll just throw this out there. Both tight ends in this game are punt plays. If you want to go to Jordan Akins, Tyler Eifert, if Eifert's who popped up on the injury report, if you don't want to play him, James O'Shaughnessy, but they're running routes. This game should be paced up. It's a 54-point total, but thought I'd mention both of those guys. And then I'll just say, I can't play David Johnson. It's just not there for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I mentioned it, but I'm not going to do it. Like, I just wanted to let our listeners know, like, you could be contrarian and do it. Jacksonville, I mean, we just saw Joe Mixon come out and absolutely obliterate them last week, but I don't know, man. I don't think I'm going to play. I don't see a scenario where I play David Johnson in a DFS lineup one time this year. I'm with you. I think I'm out, and it's not because I don't like David Johnson. He's been great in his career, but to this point, it just. The best days are behind him, I think.
That is so sad because
it's
obviously
so sad.
The footballers loved him. I think fantasy players just love David Johnson. But really, maybe we'll keep mentioning him as just a simple life check. Just like, is he alive? Is he okay? We'll keep making sure that David Johnson is around. But give me your Vegas pick on this one.
Yeah, I don't have a strong take on the sides, but I like the over quite a bit. We talked about both defenses just being so bad, and both offenses being able to come out and win. And certainly Deshaun Watson had a rough start to the year, but this is a get-right game if there ever was one, so I'll take the over in this matchup.
Yeah, I'll take Jacksonville in the 6. I could just see this being a close one coming down to field goals at the very end. But yeah, should be a good one. All right, this next one is shockingly a chance for both of these teams to go into first place. In the NFC East. So you can explain to me how the NFC East works, Betts, because nobody is trying to win here. And it's weird that the Eagles could go to the playoffs and have the number 1 pick at the same time this year. That's a wild thing to do.
I mean, hey, shout out to the Eagles for being the absolute worst first place team that ever existed in the entire existence of the NFL. But yeah, the NFL changes quick, right? 2 weeks ago, we were just sulking in our sadness of the Falcons and Eagles being 2 of the worst franchises of 2020. And here we are, we're in first place and life's good, baby. So let's go Eagles.
You shut your mouth. You shut your mouth after you got a tie and barely a win. You guys are talking things up. All right, let's get in this matchup. Talking about NFC East. It is the 0-4 New York Giants, who are barely a football team, let's be honest, at the Dallas Cowboys, who are 1-3, which, man, they put up a lot of points for being 1-3. This game has a 54-point total, which is why we're talking about it. And Dallas is 9.5-point home favorites. So the thing about this game is these defenses are trash. I mean, they have been destroyed this year, and the Cowboys have been playing at an absurd pace the entire year. And that's something that, we want to take advantage of. My first question before we get into this is Dak Prescott going to have to throw the ball 50 times against the Giants?
I hope so. But I don't think that's a realistic projection here. The games where he has had to just come out and the game is literally on his right shoulder is in games where the opposing offense comes out and just pushes Dallas to the brink where they have to throw the ball to catch up. The Browns, I mean, the Seahawks, the Falcons, etc. The Giants, I think they can put up points, but I don't think they can put up points the way those offenses can. And so I think this is a scenario where, Dak in the third quarter starts to fade out, and in the fourth quarter, it's just Zeke over and over and over again, and they just kind of ice the game here. I actually, spoiler alert, like Dallas to cover the spread. And so if we're projecting that type of situation, then certainly I think Dak's overall ceiling might be limited a little bit because he's not going to be throwing 50 times a game in the fourth quarter. But still, to me, a cash game play. He's going to come out, he's going to have 2 to 3 touchdowns and probably put up 250 to 300 yards, and he'll have a great week. But yeah, I mean, 974 yards over the past 2 weeks is an NFL record for a 2-week span by a quarterback, and I don't think we're going to see that again here this week.
The Cowboys rank first in plays per game, first in seconds per play, and second in yards per play. In other words, they are efficient, they're going fast, and they have to put up a ton of yards just to come back. And so, yeah, I agree with you. It could be that Dak is the way that they get ahead in this game. Dak gets 3 touchdowns, and then Zeke's the one that milks the clock at the very end. But I think it's a Zeke game. I've mostly faded him the last 2 weeks, but he will be the cash game running back that I go with. This week, if you're going to pay up at running back for cash. There's two guys that are priced up above everyone else. It's Zeke and Derrick Henry. And I think you need to pick between those two who you're going to roll with, and then kind of find your other running backs. But Zeke is the one that I recommend as my cash game lock. He's just so safe. He's going to get 20 touches, and at the end of the day, I think he's going to get a touchdown as well. So I love that side. In terms of Amari Cooper, the dude's leading the league in targets, and man, he's just been so safe that I feel like people are going to want to go back to him, but we've seen his volatility. We've seen volatility in wide receivers is just something you're not sure you want to go there. So would you pay up for Amari in cash?
I think I'm at the point after the first month of the season that I need to play at least one Dak and Amari stack every week, just in case they have that 3 touchdown connection and they go for 150 yards for Cooper and Dak hits 300 yards on DraftKings. Like, that happens potentially a time or two throughout the season, and I would be sick if I missed out on it. With how much they're throwing the ball and how efficient they've been, I want to play a stack or two around Amari Cooper. But I'll tell you what, the guy I'm looking at that I'll be overweight on in tournaments is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he's come out and he has been so consistent. We've seen slot receivers just absolutely torch the Giants. Cooper Kupp went 7 for 69 and a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk went 8 for 70. Juju in week 1 went 6 for 69 and 2. I mean, and CeeDee Lamb has had 5+ receptions every single game. So while I do like Amari, I'm going to play a lot of CeeDee Lamb this week because he's cheaper and he could have potentially the same ceiling in any given week as Amari Cooper.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz is there in cash. Like I like his price. It's still not up, high enough where you're going to be scared to play him. So 5,300 on FanDuel, that'll get it done. But just don't expect a ceiling game, in my opinion, for someone like Dalton Schultz. Yeah, I love the call on CeeDee Lamb. Dallas defense. Dallas defense is somebody that you really need to think about in tournaments. And they're 3,500 on FanDuel, so that's something you need to really lock in. Let's talk about the Giants side, because so far this year, they've basically been the worst hot piece of trash in the league. Like every week, Daniel Jones could not be more worse. Like he just continues to look like he can't move the ball, other than like some sneaky rushing, appeal. It's like they just can't move the ball down the field. Evan Ingram is really frustrating me in redraft, but I actually might play him in DFS this week. Tell me why I should be playing Evan Ingram.
You absolutely should be playing Evan Ingram this week. I'm very, very excited about him. And we're going to talk about another player on the Giants in a second, in Darius Slayton. But I think he's going to be relatively popular because, when you look at the matchup, it's like, oh yeah, duh, play wide receivers against Dallas. They're going to come out and smash. So I'm going to play Darius Slayton. But Evan Ingram, to me, is a GPP play that I think is going to be relatively on a lower percentage of rosters, but he should not be. This is a blow-up spot. I mean, the past 3 weeks against tight ends, Dallas has been atrocious. You've referenced this stat quite a bit. I've referenced this stat quite a bit, but without Leighton Vander Esch on the field, they're giving up receptions to tight ends like it's their job. I mean, last week we saw Austin Hooper come out and have a good game against this defense, and he has done literally nothing for the first 3 weeks of the season. So for me, Evan Ingram, he's a guy who's on the field 90% of the snaps. He's getting about 7.5 targets per game. He's just so athletic. He can take one to the house any given play. He's kind of like that hybrid wide receiver tight end that I like to have a lot of exposure to in DFS because they can kind of blow up for you. So I like Darius Slayton, but I'm going to be so overweight on Evan Ingram in tournaments this week, and hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me. But I'm riding the hot streak tight ends against Dallas here in week 5.
That's a good call. Yeah, no, this Giants side is intriguing because there's lots of different people that you could go to in a tournament and gain leverage over the rest of the field. So if you think it's Slayton, he's got a great matchup. That Dallas has just been getting destroyed by perimeter wide receivers. So at 4,800 on DK, that's like you could fit him in your lineup so easily. You could start this game by saying, I'm going to go Zeke, and then I'm going to go on the other side and maybe take either Slayton or Ingram and stack them with Daniel Jones. Only for GPPs, okay? So Daniel Jones should not ever be mentioned in cash, ever, 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 ever. He's not allowed. Don't even think it. I don't know if DK will actually let you submit a cash roster with Daniel Jones in it.
I'm going to try. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Hey, I just want to give a shout out real quick before we move on from Daniel Jones to the new upgrades on the website. This is fantastic. The player profiles on the fantasyfootballers.com is so legit. I mean, I'm looking at Daniel Jones' profile as we speak, and there's just so much good information on there. He's got 27 red zone attempts, which isn't awesome, but just one red zone touchdown, which you have to think, using that data from the website, you have to think that bounces back in this matchup. So if there was ever a week for Daniel Jones, ever, it's this week. So I'm excited about him as a GPP type of play.
Week 5 is Daniel Jones week, is what I'm hearing.
It is. It absolutely is. Let's go.
Because weeks 1 through 4 have definitely not been Daniel Jones at all. No way. Not even. And also, don't play any Giants running back. Like, don't do it. They're just not worth it.
No.
As a Falcons fan, I almost said former Falcons fan. As a Falcons fan,
hey, come over to the first place Eagles, man. We got you.
Former running back Devonta Freeman just looks toast. He's done.
Yep.
So give me your Vegas pick on this one.
Yeah, I'll lay the points with Dallas. And honestly, this is not a sports betting show by any means, but if you like Dallas, if you're like me and you like Dallas, you need to bet it now, because by the time Sunday gets around, I think it's going to be like 11 and a half points. I think it's going to climb, but I'll take Dallas here, 9.5.
I'll take the over. 54 feels like they can get there. And we've seen Dallas give that up like before halftime in some of these games. So yeah, I'll take the over. Speaking of the Falcons, I feel like this is the week. I think this is the week. The Falcons take on the Panthers at home. The Falcons are somehow 0-4, which feels like it should have an asterisk next to it. And the Panthers are 2-2, 2 wins in a row. Here's the formula for success bets. If Christian McCaffrey goes out, you start winning. Explain that one to me.
Football. That is football in 2020 in a nutshell right there.
We have talked up the Panthers. We did a lot this offseason, and it's looked a little different than what we thought. It's been a lot of Robbie Anderson, and it's been a lot of Mike Davis. Mike Davis is someone that you can trust, at least I do at this point. I've seen it a couple weeks in a row, where you can trust him in cash. On DK, I will be playing him at 6,400 in my cash lineup. So I usually play 3 running backs. So it's going to be Zeke. It's probably going to be Mike Davis at this point in the week, because Atlanta has always, we always give up receptions to the running back position. It's just something we've never covered it. So I like Mike Davis. I think he's a safe play in this one. And then find another running back. But that's a great way to start your roster. But this game right now at 53.5, I feel like I already like the over. Just spoiler. Like this, everyone saw the Falcons on Monday night and they saw how bad they played. And I think you need to go right back to them in DFS. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll play Falcons every single week. It's still a good offense. Every team in the NFL is going to have a down week at some point, but this is still a good offense, and certainly we want to attack bad defenses. Ben Cummins, our good friend, who writes up articles in the DFS Pass, please check that out, wrote up a free article before the season start, and there's certain defenses we want to attack every single week in DFS. He talked about the Panthers for good reason, and here we are again, right? Like, you want to attack the Panthers. They are not a good defense. Matt Ryan historically plays way better at home in the dome than he does on the road. There might not be Julio Jones in this game, which certainly could bring down Matt Ryan's ceiling, but certainly you want to have some exposure to Calvin Ridley. I think Russell Gage is a really sneaky type of play here. He's just $5,100 on DraftKings and just 56 on FanDuel. 5,600 to me is great. Carolina's a defense that plays a lot of zone coverage, and so they limit your deep passing, but Russell Gage working in the slot, I think could win and could have a nice day. They're giving up 70% completion percentage to the slot. So there's still a lot to like about the Falcons. Recency bias is a real thing in DFS, and I don't think we should be fading the Falcons as heavily as other people may be this week.
Yeah, we've mentioned Matt Ryan as just a DraftKings play most of the time, and I think he's set up for success. The Falcons, they rank second in seconds per play, so they're paced up, but they're 21st in points per drive. So they've just been super inefficient. And I don't mind going back to Calvin Ridley. People saw that goose, and I think you need to go back to him. And you have to pay up, which makes him in tournaments. So tournaments only. Calvin Ridley is someone that is going to be rostered much lower than you would any other week. Weeks before this, you're getting him at 15+%. I bet he will be under 7% because he's so priced up and people are looking at what happened last time. So I really like that stack if you want to do that in tournaments. Also with Russell Gage. Thoughts on Todd Gurley? He had 2 touchdowns this past week, but other than that, he's looked pretty poor on the field. So any interest?
No, he's in that category of I just can't click the draft button or click the submit button to my lineup with Todd Gurley in it. I mean, he just hasn't looked good, and touchdowns are tough to predict, as we've talked about before. Yeah, man, he's a guy that I think we all pegged as like, okay, if he can't do it on the ground, like he can at least do it through the air, but he's just not seeing targets at all. I mean, he hasn't really seen much since week 1 where he saw 5, and then since then it's been 0, 1, 2. Like he's just not getting work in the passing game. So I can't. He doesn't have the ceiling. I can't go back to him.
On the other side of the ball, Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson has become the wide receiver 1, and Atlanta is allowing the most deep completions in the league. I mean, that's just screaming for us to play Robbie Anderson. At his price, he's $5,900. I want him in my lineups and tournaments, especially for me. This game is a simple double stack. It's me saying I want Ryan, Ridley, and Gage, and then the other side, Mike Davis and Robbie Anderson. If you really just want to say full on stack, I want this game. I think it's going to hit the over. I think you can fit all of those in your lineup and still find a place for a high-end running back because there's some affordable pieces here. So I like this game to hit the over. And on the Panthers side, I just like what I see from Teddy Bridgewater. He had a little scoot this past week that
he did.
We haven't really seen from our boy Teddy Two Gloves, but the dude can run a little bit, and I'd like to see more of that. So would you play Teddy?
Yeah, that was so funny this weekend, man. He had that touchdown run. Immediately you and I both text each other at the exact same time. Like, that's our boy, Teddy, let's go. So yes, I will play Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, you just want to play quarterbacks against Atlanta. I'm sorry, Kyle. They cannot stop anyone through the air. So yes, we'll play some Teddy Bridgewater. I do want some Robbie Anderson, no doubt about it. I'm with you on Mike Davis, but again, I talked about it with Kenyon Drake. I'm going to go back to DJ Moore this week in GPPs. I will not play him in cash, but I think people just are so short-sighted and they say, you know what? It's been one too many weeks. I've gotten burned by DJ Moore. Robbie Anderson's the new wide receiver 1. I'm not going to play DJ Moore. I think he could come in this matchup at single-digit roster percentage. And to me, it's just a great GPP play. He could be a guy that just takes the long one to the house and wins you a week. So I want some DJ Moore this week.
You are a masochist. You just like hurting yourself with Kenyon Drake, DJ Moore, just like, well, that's what I did to myself last week. But yes, I agree. I think it's actually a good call in tournaments to go there. Real quickly, the line is 2.5. Oh, man. I know I'm biased, so I usually like to throw myself out of here, but I feel like my Falcons are going to rally around Dan Quinn, who should have been fired 2 years ago. And so I'll take the Falcons in the points.
It is truly impressive that he still has a head coaching job for the Falcons. But with all that being said, I will take Carolina here. It's just a game that I don't have a strong conviction for one way or the other. And so by default, I'll just take the team that's getting points here with Carolina at +2.5.
All right, let's get to our last game. This is the Bengals, who are 1-2-1. It's a fun team against the Ravens, who are 3-1. Baltimore is 13.5-point favorites. Usually Ravens games are ones that are interdivisional that we kind of stay away from in DFS. We usually look at the Ravens defense as one that just dominates and just completely suppress the other side of the ball. But the Ravens defense has actually allowed the 4th highest pass rate and the 9th most passing yards in the league. So they've actually given it up way more than what you would believe. And the Bengals have been pace up the entire year. They're 6th in seconds per play, and they've had the 2nd most plays per game. Now, they did play an overtime game against your Eagles. You guys tied the Bengals, man. The Bengals.
I tried to forget that, but I guess I'm brought back to the memory of them punting on 4th down with 20 seconds left. Yes, I am now officially mad at the Eagles again, so thank you, Kyle.
So can you play the Bengals against the Ravens, which feels like a major no-no, but can you stack Joe Burrow with, maybe Tyler Boyd or T. Higgins, or can you, maybe this is a bigger question that DFSers are going to want to know. After Joe Mixon's giant explosion last week, Can you go back to him on the road against Baltimore?
It's tough. I don't think so. And it's mostly because of the fact that we want to understand that, in DFS specifically, it's a week-to-week game for sure, right? We reset each week. We reset our lineups. We have a new mindset. But you also have to look at, the historical trends across a longer sample size. And Joe Mixon is the type of player that will spike and then disappear, and then he'll spike and then he'll disappear. And so I can't trust him in cash, but certainly you could look at him in a GPP. I think if I'm looking at someone on the Cincy side of the ball, I think Tyler Boyd is just so safe. He's been incredible this year, and no one's talking about how good he's been. At $6,000 on FanDuel, to me, he's a really sneaky type of play because, I'm sorry, man, AJ Green is just, he's not it right now at this stage of his career. Tyler Boyd's seeing a ton of volume. He's been productive. He's shown great chemistry with Joe Burrow. So I think he can come out and win. We just saw Terry McLaurin with now bench Dwayne Haskins come out and finish as a very, very productive wide receiver last week, caught 10 footballs. So yes, I will play Tyler Boyd in this matchup.
It's hard for me to figure out how I fully want to stack this game. I know there's going to be points, right? It has a 51 point total, so it needs to be something we talk about, but it feels like I want to just have a Ravens onslaught stack. You have to pay up for Lamar. I mentioned that before. But it feels like it could be a Hollywood week. I feel like he's kind of, most people have overlooked him, but do you think maybe on DK, you could start with like a Lamar and Hollywood stack and then running back with Boyd on the other side? Like, I feel like that's a safe way to get a piece of this game while not, maybe going overboard. Maybe you want to throw in Mark Andrews as well, but talk me into Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really need to because it sounds like you're already in, but I'll try. I mean, he's a guy that we've talked about, over the course of the past several weeks in the offseason as being a ceiling type of player. And this is a game where Hollywood can reach his ceiling. He is seeing a ton of the Lamar Jackson air yards. 44% of the air yards is insane. He's seeing a 27% target share, and he's been tackled at the 1 yard line twice this season in 4 weeks. I mean, that just, to players, like, that happens like once a year or twice a year maybe, and it's happened twice for Hollywood in 4 weeks. To me, I'm going to put this out there. He finds the end zone. I think he's a touchdown scorer this week. It's coming for Hollywood Brown. A ceiling game is coming. And so, yes, I think stacking Lamar with Hollywood and then bringing it back with Tyler Boyd is my preferred way to go in this matchup. I really, really love Hollywood this week.
I mostly stayed away from the Ravens backfield in DFS. You just don't want an RBBC. Like, you don't want to look at a backfield and guess when it comes to DFS and say to yourself, you know what, this guy's going to get 15 touches, I think. And Mark Ingram is somewhat tempting, especially on FanDuel. He's 6,100, so he's actually right there with Kenyon Drake if you wanted to go there on FanDuel as kind of like a pivot. But yeah, I'm mostly just going to go with Lamar, stack him with either Hollywood and Mark Andrews. And then the other side, it's Drew Sample. Am I right?
Dude, so listen to this. I had to play him last week with all the injuries, with all of a sudden bye week for the Steelers and the Titans. I'm going to start 2 tight end league, and it is terrifying. And I had Drew Sample, and I was like, I guess I'm doing it. And he came out, had 12 points. Like, it was awesome. So yes, go Drew Sample, the official tight end of the Footballers DFS show. Let's build on our guys real quick. It's quarterback. It's Teddy B. That's 100%.
And let's be clear, these are players that are very endearing to us, and we're not saying that they are the best. They're not even great DFS plays, but they are our boys, and we want to bring them up every single episode. I would say for a while it was Marv Jones, but
oh yeah, or Terry McLaurin. He's been a better talking point for us this year. But yes, we both love Marv. It just hasn't happened yet. So soon, Marv. Soon is your time.
No, let's go with Terry. Terry sounds much better. Drew Sample, and then, man, who's a running back that we both love that we've talked up a bunch?
I think it might be James Robinson. I'm coming around on the guy. He's just been so productive, and you talked about him in March. Like, come on, he's the official running back of the show.
Yeah, man. So we're geniuses. Let's just call it that. Okay, give me on this line. What do you like with the Vegas?
Yeah, it's a 13.5 point spread, and I like Cincy to cover. I mean, it's a huge spread. We almost saw Dwayne Haskins cover this last week, and Joe Burrow each week is getting better and better. So I think it's going to be a closer game than people think. I will take the points with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think I would go there as well. I don't feel strong enough, but I could see this going under just because AFC North games, defense. Yeah, and Cincy's defense has improved. You know, they're not like at the bottom of the league they were for years in a row. So I don't mind going there as well. All right, let's battle it out.
DFS Battle Royale.
Bets, you last week got destroyed by me. I had a couple of great calls. Good. We're actually tied now. I've come all the way back, and I've tied in terms of our wins. So right now I have 9, you have 9, and our guests have 1 on the year. But this week we're going to get into a couple of interesting categories. And for those of you out there, this is a chance for us to compete against one another, but to do the mental exercise of giving yourself categories when you're looking at DraftKings or you're looking at FanDuel. We're going to use FanDuel this week, but you get to ask yourself, who is somebody, this first category, who is someone outside of QB15 that you could actually see coming through in terms of points per dollar? So when you're looking at selecting a quarterback, is there somebody outside of that first group and that second group, that major tier that you could say could come through? So who do you like outside of QB15?
Let's go right back to the official quarterback of the Ballers DFS show, Mr. Teddy Bridgewater, Teddy Two Gloves, the quarterback 4 from week 4. He was fantastic, and I think this is a week where you can just smash. I love on our site, for the Foot Clan supporters, the Stream Finder tool is just so clutch. Let me read you what the Stream Finder is telling me about the matchup with the Falcons, okay? They are ranking 32 in the league in terms of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. They have given up the following finishes to the quarterbacks: quarterback 1, quarterback 1, quarterback 4, and quarterback 3. I think it's a pretty good matchup here for Teddy Bridgewater based off those numbers, if I'm reading that correctly. So give me some Teddy Two Gloves here at 7K on FanDuel.
I'm going to stay with Daniel Jones. I think he's just crazy enough of a pick to win you a GPP. He's done that for people in the past. This is kind of like Mitch Trubisky. If you know, Mitch Trubisky is going to have those 2 or 3 games a year, and he has the rushing equity. And so I love that about Daniel Jones. The Cowboys defense has been utter trash this year. And I'll just also throw out there, it's kind of fun that Kyle Allen is starting for Washington. I played him a couple times in DFS last year, and he paid off, but I'm not telling you to play him, but just keep your eye out. He could be usable because Dwayne Haskins certainly wasn't. All right, give me a running back in the top 5, so top 5 in terms of salary that you think could bust.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my boy Miles Sanders here. Obviously, our listeners know I'm an Eagles fan, but I am not a biased DFS analyst. I'm worried about Miles Sanders this week. He's taking on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is now coming off the unexpected bye with the COVID situation of last week. More time to prepare for Miles Sanders, who, let's be honest, is pretty much the only weapon in the offense at this point. And we've seen guys like Saquon Barkley just do absolutely nothing against this defensive line. The Eagles, man, they are struggling with the offensive line injuries. I think it's going to get really ugly really quickly for Miles Sanders. To me, no way he pays off his salary of $7,500 on FanDuel.
Josh Jacobs is $8,200 on FanDuel, which is just stupid crazy. On DraftKings, he's much cheaper. I mentioned him as somebody on DraftKings that's kind of buried in some of the pricing, but listen to his fantasy output so far this year. On FanDuel, 33.9 first week. I mean, that won you the week with Josh Jacobs, but since then, 12 points, 7.8 points, and 8.8 points. That is not even close to being able to pay off for that salary. That's not even 1xing some of the time. So Josh Jacobs against the Chiefs on the road, you're hoping for a touchdown, but like I mentioned, he's never scored a touchdown in Raiders loss. No thank you. All right, give me a high-priced wide receiver over 6,500 you're going to roll with this week.
Yeah, we talked about this matchup with the Chiefs, and I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill here in our contest. He is $8,200, so certainly he is expensive on FanDuel, but it's for good reason. He's taking on LaMarcus Joyner in his cornerback matchup here, and you'll probably talk about this in the article in the DFS Pass, but LaMarcus Joyner, man, has just been toasted week after week. He's giving up a 76% completion percentage, the 6th most yards after the catch, and Tyreek Hill with his speed certainly can win in that way. Other deep threat wide receivers against him have won. We're looking at Stephon Diggs. Last week went 6 for 115. Robbie Anderson went 6 for 114 and a touchdown against that cornerback. So Tyreek Hill is going to win in this matchup, and I think he's going to smash. So yes, give me Tyreek at $8,200.
Speaking of Stephon Diggs, he's 7,100 on FanDuel. He's the wide receiver 8 on FanDuel, but wide receiver 4 on DK. So he's a value there. And man, he's just been so fun this year. That whole Bills team has been with Josh Allen. But what we've seen this year is that Stephon Diggs actually has a floor. In years past, he's had these monster games and then just disappear. But so far this year, he's been in double digits every single week. I think he's set up for success against the Titans. And yeah, I love Stephon Diggs. I love him stacking Josh Allen and him. I'll also throw out there that John Brown is only $4,800 on DK. That is a serious misprice. A lot of people looked at his line last week. He also came into the game hurt. But man, John Brown is someone that's going to win somebody a tournament one of these weeks. And so if you don't like Diggs, if you want to go a little bit cheaper, I don't mind John Brown. All right, I purposely put this question in here because we had a listener ask us, but this week is a week where you got to pay up for those top 3 tight ends between Kelsey, Kittle, and Andrews. So of those top 3 on FanDuel, who do you like the most, Bets?
It's hard to pick because they're all fantastic, but I'm going to roll with George Kittle. I mean, what he did last week against my Eagles was just absolutely insane. 15 targets, 15 receptions. Now he gets to take on the Dolphins. There is nobody that can keep up with George Kittle on that defense. I think he's going to come out and absolutely smash here. He's $7,100 on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's the cheapest of those 3 on FanDuel. I could see him being rostered on like almost 20% of lineups. Like he's going to be super popular because everyone wants to step down in price. So I'm going to pay up and go with Travis Kelce. I mentioned him earlier, $7,800. Just that high floor, and I think he's set up to smash. I think he can get in the end zone really easily against the Raiders, and I really like it. All right, last one here in our Battle Royale. Let's give me a cheap DST that you will be rolling with.
Yeah, how about the Cleveland Browns here at $3,800? They're taking on the Colts, and Phillip Rivers has these weeks where he just comes out and all of a sudden looks like he has no idea what he's doing anymore. And the wide receiver core is disgusting in Indy. T.Y. Hilton is not looking great as the wide receiver 1. They're dealing with a ton of injuries. So to me, I mean, Phillip Rivers could find himself in situations where he has no idea who he's throwing the ball to, and all of a sudden you have a pick 6 on your hands with the Browns. So I will take Cleveland here as a cheap DST here in week 5.
Yeah, dropping down $300 more. Cowboys are $3,500. They've been bad, but they're playing at home against the Giants. I like the Cowboys, and in terms of correlation, play Zeke, play the Cowboys defense, and you're set up to just get a lot of points there. We also just need to mention that the Cardinals are going to be super popular against the Jets, and they're actually priced in a way on FanDuel where they're a value. They're $4,200, the DST 8, where on DK, they're the 2nd overall defense. So the Cardinals on FanDuel are somebody that you're going to want to play in cash especially, but they're going to be popular across the board. So make sure you think about the Cardinals.
Mailbag.
I wanted to get into a couple of questions here that some listeners asked. A couple of them are strategy based, and I think a lot of people, there's so many questions of start sit if you play redraft, or there's just so many of those kind of questions. But strategy is how you learn how to take the game of DFS and look at it through a different lens, especially if the first couple of weeks here you haven't done so well in cash. I've gotten a lot of questions. I know you too have gotten these bets where people are saying, my lineups aren't doing as well. Am I doing something wrong? And a lot of times it's just when you're configuring your lineups, it's, asking yourself, is this team built to withstand things that go wrong? And last week, mine wasn't built in a way where things could go wrong for DJ Moore or Kenyon Drake. I needed a higher floor. I missed a couple of those lineups cashing by 10 points, which is not much. So I love these questions.
Worst.
Yeah, no, that's that's when you look at it and go, oh man, especially if no one gets injured. If someone gets injured, that's going to happen and you just have to move on. But if no one gets injured and you miss out, you're like, man, here's where I went wrong. So you could send in your questions at Kyle_Borg or at the Fantasy PT on Twitter. But let's get into this first one for you, Bets. Steven Duran. He asks, what's the best strategy for showdown slates, such as picking a defense, sleepers at a captain spot, or playing both QBs? What advice would you give for those single game showdown slates?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I wish I had a really quick answer, but unfortunately I don't, because each matchup is going to be different in that you want to kind of look at the game script and understand, okay, what player is likely going to come out and have the best possible matchup or performance, I should say, based off matchup, based on game environment, all those sort of things. I would really encourage you to go back and listen to an episode that you and I recorded, Kyle. I want to say it was right before the Thursday Night Football preview for the Chiefs and the Texans. We talked a lot about picking a captain, the strategy behind it, but here's my take on the situation. You want to pick a player in GPP formats who is going to come out and have a spike week and not be rostered on a ton of teams, because those players can come out and it's such a high variance game. It's just one game sample, so you can't get locked in. So for example, and this comes out on Friday, I wrote up Darnell Mooney as a potential captain choice in Thursday night's game, which was last night, if you're listening on Friday, and hopefully he did fantastic. We'll find out, I guess. But as a pivot off of Allen Robinson, if you're playing in a cash type of format, you're going to want to look at, the quote-unquote safe player who you think will have the most points regardless of matchup. And so usually in those cases, you're looking at a quarterback or the top running back. But I would really encourage you to check out the DFS Pass. I write up the showdown preview for Thursday Night Football every single week, and there's a lot more strategy in that one as well.
Yeah, on DraftKings, it has some funky pricing when you're doing showdown slates, because one, the captain spot is multiplied by 1.5, but then also there's some salaries when you're building lineups on DraftKings that you can get players for $200, $500. And that gives you so many more combinations than maybe you can on FanDuel. And so I would just say the best strategy is, if you're playing in a tournament, you just need to lock in your captain, lock in your person. And then in the optimizer, which we have in our DFS Pass, you just find a couple of combinations that work for you. So if you want to max out, if you're in a DraftKings tournament that maxes out with 20 entries, you need to put in the full 20 entries and say, you know what, this week, I'm going to make sure that I have this player as my captain, and I need to figure out the tons of different combinations. So a couple weeks ago, I had Sam Darnold as my captain, and boy, did I look great after that first really long rushing touchdown. And then that game just went weird after that with Brett Rippon. And anyway, but that's what you need to do. You just need to find out and make a pick of who you think that person is. But in terms of playing both QBs, is that something that you do, Bets?
Not too often, especially because for me, in the showdown slates, I like to play more GPP style of games, because it's so tough to win these in cash, because if you get the captain wrong, you're done. You're dead in the water. And so I like to have a little bit of variance mixed in. And so I do play a couple lineups with two quarterbacks, but usually I'm looking at a scenario where it's one quarterback and a couple of pass catchers, and then kind of correlating with the running back and a defense on the other side, those sorts of things. But you certainly can. Their price tag, though, is just insane. And so if you play one in the captain spot, 1.5 times what their normal salary is on DraftKings just puts you in a really tough spot at other positions. So usually it's one quarterback for me in these DFS showdown slates.
This next question comes in from Aqua Buddha. Interesting.
I love it.
It's a wild question, but I think it's fun to at least ask. Are Kyle Allen and Joe Flacco worth a look regardless of their price tag? And I think what he's saying is, these guys, going into the week, we did not know that Kyle Allen would be starting for Washington and Joe Flacco would be for the Jets. When they set the prices on the site, it didn't reflect that. And so these guys are the bare minimum. Would you consider punting and playing either of these two guys?
I don't think I can. Joe Flacco, we haven't seen on the field except for a few snaps last Thursday. And then Kyle Allen was just bad last year, to be honest with you. And, the matchups aren't great for either of these guys. Arizona's a better defense. People give them credit. And I think the Rams are just going to suffocate Kyle Allen. So yeah, I'm not looking at these guys this week in DFS.
Yeah, if you really have a thing for lighting your money on fire, do it. But yeah, whenever you get these with quarterbacks and you're getting the cheap player, you could just Kyle Allen would be the one I would pick if I was honest, just because I like the Washington weapons. But they're cheap for a reason. They're backup quarterbacks for a reason. And when you look at the matchups, like you said, like it'd be different if Kyle Allen was playing the Falcons or playing a team that we could take advantage of. But the Rams is not one that I want to go against. So yeah, I would just, if you want to do a single entry tournament and go there, but you're asking Kyle Allen to score 25 points. And I don't think that's going to happen this week.
Probably not.
All right, next one's from Junior at Kurt Jr. _22. Is a Carolina stack worth going back to, or is the combo of them both being good last week plus Atlanta being hot garbage on defense going to pump up their ownership? And the point I wanted to bring up here is how much are people going to concentrate on this game specifically? Like stacking Panthers, do you think a lot of people are going to be on that this week?
I certainly think there's going to be a good amount of people. I don't think it's going to be too high that we can't play it, especially because I think there's a stigma around our boy, Teddy, and people don't think he is a high upside type of player. And I think in this matchup, he can be. And so I do think Robbie Anderson will have some ownership. I do think Mike Davis will be on a ton of rosters. But it's okay if you get different in other ways. Like we talked about before, put Teddy with DJ Moore. No one's going to play that stack because they're scared of DJ Moore. And then bring it back on the other side with Russell Gage, who's contrarian. Or you could always go with Calvin Ridley if you wanted to kind of go with the smart play, quote unquote. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be too high. I certainly want exposure to this matchup, and I'll have a lot of Carolina this week.
The thing with quarterback, and if you want to get into ownership percentages, it's relatively flat. You're not going to find a quarterback that's going to be over 10% most weeks. Last week, Ryan Fitzpatrick was that guy because he was so grossly mispriced on DraftKings. And so he was someone that was super popular. But for the most part, quarterbacks are going to be just, 7%, maybe 4%. Maybe nobody's talking about someone that are 1%. Like at the end of the day, if you want to go with the stack, you roll with it. And you have to ask yourself, though, can my combination of my quarterback and my wide receiver get me 50 points? Just that two right there. And then on the other side, is it the pass catching running back? Is it a wide receiver that can chip in maybe another 15 to 20? You're just asking yourself, are these teams going to be keeping pace? And I think that is one worth looking at between Carolina and Atlanta. All right, let's get this last one from Nate Russiano. He says, talk about how you can predict game script and how that plays in a role in lineup construction, showdown strategies, and multi-game stack theory. So how do you go about figuring out what game script you think is going to take place when we're looking at these games?
Yeah, I think part of it is a combination of trusting Vegas, who, just year after year, it's crazy how close they are to the game totals and to the spreads and those sort of things. But then also, if you're listening to our show and if you're listening to the main show, the Fantasy Footballer show, you're going to be a very knowledgeable football fan. And so you can use your knowledge as well to kind of say, okay, there's injuries on this side of the ball, or this player is playing very, very well, or maybe they're not playing well at all. And so maybe we don't see the ceiling that they once had, or whatever the scenario is. But you kind of have to say, okay, this is what Vegas is predicting, and I think they're right, or I think they're a little bit off in one direction or the other, and then build around that way. But then at the same time, you have to understand, as we've said multiple times on this show, there's so much variance in football. And so I think you want to plan for both types of scenarios to play out. The game hitting the over and both passing attacks just going nuts, but then also the running backs succeeding and the defense also putting up a good week. So you want to kind of play it on both sides if you're playing multiple lineups in GPPs. But I think if you're looking at it one way or the other, to me, the best piece of advice is trust Vegas. It's insane how accurate they are.
Yeah, look at the Vegas totals. Like Bet said, that's a place to start. I'll give you an example. We talked about the Bengals at the Ravens, and the Ravens are 13.5 point favorites. So what Vegas is telling you is they're calling a Ravens onslaught. Like they're saying that the Ravens are just going to destroy that. I mean, that's a giant line. So first ask yourself, you know what? Okay, so if the Ravens are going to win by 2 touchdowns, how are they going to get those? Is that coming through Lamar, or is that coming through Mark Ingram? Like that, those are the two ways that you kind of have to look at it. But then I like to also give myself 2 other game scripts when I look at each game and say, you know what, maybe the way this game takes place is the Ravens defense scores a touchdown and the Bengals are playing catch up, but they're actually keeping it close. So what that's telling me is I need to actually look maybe at the Bengals side and say, you know what, Burrow could have 60 pass attempts, which we saw that Thursday night game against the Browns. Yeah, it's 60 something attempts. Like that's the kind of story, that the narrative that you have to tell yourself. And then you get to go another direction and say, you know what happens in this game is it just goes under. Like that's the thing that we need to tell ourselves. We love the offensive points, but you could look at this game and say 51 points. Man, what if this game just hits the under? What if, Mark Ingram gets a touchdown, Lamar Jackson gets maybe 2 touchdowns, and the Bengals score 13 points. Like that's not going to be enough to help you in DFS really stack. So then that's a game that you would fade. So I like to give myself 3 scripts for a game based on the obvious Vegas line, if things stay close, and then the other one, which nobody likes to hear, is if it hits the under. The under is what old people who are grumpy and don't like football, that's what they want to root for. Nobody likes rooting for an under, but that's actually how you win in DFS, is you stay away from certain games and certain players and try not to get too cute. Any last thoughts on game scripts?
No, I think you said it perfectly, and I think it's certainly a conversation that is intriguing, but it's really, really a difficult thing to answer in just a few minutes. So I would encourage you to check us out on Twitter and reach out to us, and we can talk more about it. But yes, that's a great way to put it, Kyle.
Yeah, we have some great evergreen episodes in August where we went through how to win consistently in DFS. We gave some of our top tips and strategies. We talked about showdown slates. I think those are episodes that are worth listening to because they're going to be ones that help you throughout the year and make you a better DFS player. So any last closing thoughts for people as we go into week 5?
I just got to say, over the past few weeks in the pod, I have not worn a backwards hat, and I haven't had an awesome week in DFS. Backwards hat is back on. It's week 5. Let's go. We're going to have a great week. Good luck in week 5.
You heard it here. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com.